If you'd like to stand for the reading of the scripture. Matthew 25, verse 34 through 40. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came to visit me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?" The king will reply, "Truly I tell you, whatever you did for one of the least of these brothers and sisters of mine, you did for me." Amen.
Alex, you coming up too? You see who's trying to get out of it. So I don't know if you guys remember when Tom Heaton came and spoke to us last year, but I can remember the moment he finished speaking, I knew that I was going. And, I'm just kind of at a place in my life where I don't question what I feel like God is telling me to do. And the minute he walked out of this room, I didn't know how I was going to get there, and I didn't know what he was going to think about it, but I knew that I was going. And I didn't really know why. I didn't know why God wanted me to go. But I think there are several reasons. But I think a big part of it for me is that, I can stand up here and I can talk to you all I want about going and doing God's work in the world, and I can encourage my children, and we can do this locally. But I needed my girls to see that sometimes you have to step out of that comfort zone, and you have to reach out to the world. And yes, there's need here, but there's need in other places too. And if I want them to have the courage to go and do that, I have to be willing to do that too. And I think there are so many things I could tell you about what we saw there and how it affected me, but what has stuck with me the longest is the stories of the people that we met who actually work for Mission Guatemala, because it's not just people from the States who go there and work there, and Tom and Dave who have founded it, but our translator Diego has a really powerful story about his childhood and how he's really working to become an influence to better his community. And Edgar and a lot of different people who they leave their families to come and do this work for these people in Mission Guatemala. And so that's what sticks with me.
A mission trip was something I've wanted to do for several years now, and the day that Tom came and spoke, from that day for several weeks, I thought about it, prayed about it. Never thought I would go on one. The first one I went on would be that far away, but I felt like I was being told that this is the one for me, so I listened and went. I didn't know what to expect when we got there. It's kind of a culture shock. I saw lots of poverty, saw lots of happy people that live in the conditions that they live in. I think if you would picture what we saw in the States, people would be more negative. Everybody always had a smile on their face. They were welcoming to us. I brought back a new appreciation for the simple things that we have. We can go turn on a faucet and get a drink of water that won't make you sick. The work that Mission Guatemala does, they will have a lasting impact for many, many years. The pictures you're seeing of the kitchen we were building will feed 400 plus kids for many years to come. The medical clinic, the same thing. And I'm really glad that I went. would definitely go back again.
You can see from those pictures how beautiful it is. It's beautiful and green and lush. To it. Okay. As you can see from the pictures, it is really beautiful and lush, and the flowers are just wonderful. The place is just phenomenal. Whether you go on a mission trip or just go and visit, it is beautiful country. I'm like they are. When Tom spoke, I'd always wanted to go to Africa on a mission trip, but my age was creeping up, and I thought, if I don't do it now, I don't know why God wanted me there. I just know that I have a big appreciation for my life as it is, and just love those Mayan people. They were very interesting. We learned a lot about them. I could probably talk longer than Chris's longest sermon on the subject of Guatemala. We did work hard. I was the weakest link in this chain gang. They worked very hard. And we worked with Guatemalan Mayan people. Some of them didn't speak English, but it was amazing how they managed to communicate, especially with Shelby and Janelle, on what they wanted. And they must have been frustrated because they don't do things the way we do them. And who's laughing at me? Oh. And then the thing that really fascinated me was the women. They are a very proud people, and these women worked so hard on weaving. They showed us how they dyed the fabric. I'm crafty. I go to a shop and buy a pattern, buy the yarn, come home, and it's as easy. They have to dye their thread. They have to wind it, and then they don't weave on a loom like we would. It's attached to the wall, and she ties it round her waist. I was just fascinated how neat it was. And these women have to sell this for a mere pittance. Probably not enough to feed them one meal. And that is very sad. You see people walking around carrying bundles on their head and wood on their backs. They live. Yes, they're right, that you would not believe living in this country when we say poor. We have no idea what poor is. They live in circumstances you and I couldn't do. And the proud thing I have about Mission Guatemala is they have a big respect for the Mayan people. They are only interested in them having clean water and nourishing food, because they are a small people from undernourishment, and to educate them, and then the medical supply. The clinic they've built is awesome, and they have a doctor. They were interviewing a dentist while we were there, and then I think their next goal is for eye care. These people just have not had this. And we were up at 6,000 feet up in the mountains, and we all had to make sure we drank a lot because of that. But Guatemala is a beautiful country, and if you're thinking of going on a mission trip, please think seriously about this place.
This was my third mission trip. The first two were youth mission trips, but the first one I thought that missions might be my thing, but I wasn't sure. By the second mission trip, I had no doubt. When Tom came to speak, I didn't say anything to anyone, but I knew I wanted to go. I went to the meeting. I didn't tell John. I didn't tell anyone, and was glad I did, and the rest is history from there. I wanted to be the change that I wanted to see. It was really important to me to do something, to be the person to be what I call my religion. I expected really primitive living conditions. I expected to see really poor people. What I experienced was poor living conditions by our standards, but a very rich people, not by money, but with family. No one says before they die they wish they'd worked more, and that's something I felt like I learned from this. I needed to change what I was doing because I was working too many hours. I wasn't living the life that I wanted to live. I expected to see a completely different country, and I was really excited to do that. I experienced beautiful lakes and volcanoes and a very kind, hardworking people that were very grateful that we were there. Every turn we were thanked for our presence there, for what we did. And it's just a week out of our lives. It was nothing to us, but it was so much to them, and they were so, so thankful. I expected to work hard, and work hard we did. I have helped roof 2 houses in July and August. I've helped pour concrete in 105 degrees, and this was by far harder than that. There are no concrete trucks that bring the concrete to this place. We mix the concrete on the ground and then put it in a 5-gallon bucket or a half of a 5-gallon bucket and walked it down a plank and into the kitchen and poured it on the floor and went back and got more. And we did that all day long, and it was a lot of work. With that said, when the rest of us were done, Bob Townsend was still running circles around us. I've never in my life met a more hardworking man than him, and he was the first one up. He had coffee made for us. I also expected beautiful drives to the work site, and what I found out was there are no straight roads in the whole country of Guatemala. We knew we were going to help build this kitchen, and these people were very thankful we were there. I've said that before, but I just can't reiterate enough how thankful they were. They were just so thankful. If you're thinking about doing this, I would highly suggest do it. It was changing for us. I'm so glad John went with me because he had no desire to go until Chris spoke to him, and something we shared together. I think it was, he says I told him he was going. That's not true. Oh, he's all mine, girls.
I'm Judy, and this is Bob, and he does work hard for an old man. After spending a junior year in college in Mexico, I've always had an interest in Central America. I've been on several tourist trips there in the past few years, but I was a bit apprehensive about whether I could do the work. Bob really wanted to go, and I didn't want to get left behind, so I went. And there were 3 of us women who were over 65, and the work was quite difficult for us. The younger women, Janelle, Beth, they were carrying 40-pound buckets of concrete, and it was really hard for them too. I know Janelle hurt her back one day, and I went to the site the next day, and I told one of the construction foremen, I said, you know, she can't carry 40-pound buckets. She hurt herself. This guy was 32. He was a Guatemalan. His regular job was construction. He said, well, I hurt too. So what we did was we filled the buckets halfway up, and Janelle, with her hurt back, carried the half buckets. You know, the poverty was the same that I had seen in 1969, so I wasn't shocked or surprised, but you're always saddened and sympathetic toward it. There are a lot of single mothers there. Some fathers are illegal immigrant workers in the U.S., and as a matter of fact, one of the construction workers named Elmer, as a matter of fact, the one who said, well, I hurt too, he worked illegally in the U.S. for 7 years. He planted trees for reforestation projects at 5 cents per tree. After 7 years, he was deported as an illegal. The women sew and weave and embroider to support themselves. Do your job, Bob. And part of the benefit of our going is we bring our tourist dollars and we purchase their things. These things, the table runner and the wall hangings, they take 2 to 3 weeks to make. They start with dyeing the thread. They use natural dyes. They use little bugs from the cactuses, and they make all these beautiful colors. And these sell for $25 to $30. And remember, they took 2 to 3 weeks to make. These women also have children. They carry their infants on their backs in shawls all the time. They carry water. They cook over open fires. As a matter of fact, the stoves that you saw in the kitchen we were building are wood-burning stoves. And that's what they cook on, wood-burning stoves, if they're lucky to have one. If not, they just cook over open fires. Now, for those of you who donated shoes, that were going to Mission Guatemala, we did see those. They were at the medical mission, and they were neatly stacked on shelves. And they were there for the patients who came and needed shoes. They could go to these shelves, and they could pick out shoes for themselves and their children. Part of the fees that we paid to go down and do this mission trip, go directly to Mission Guatemala. They have wages to pay. They pay wages to the director, the groundskeeper, the translators, the cooks, the construction workers. They were all very hardworking. They were all nice people. And it was really rewarding to see the jobs that were provided to local people. And so I think that's what I took away. And now Bob.
Well, as you can see, all of us could speak much longer on this subject. This is something that had a huge impact on all of us. Chris asked us to answer a few questions whenever he asked us to speak, and one of the more important questions I thought that he asked was, what we expected and what did we bring back. And, I was impressed by what they didn't have, but, as a farmer, I saw them raising corn on hillsides that were so steep, it would have been difficult to stand on, let alone you could never use any equipment on it. And, they had to feel very desperate to have to use that area to raise their crop on to feed their family. And a small thing, I asked for some nails at the work site one day to build something, and I was given a handful of bent nails. They had used them before, so I just had to straighten those nails out in order to use them. As Judy said, all the kitchens were served with wood-burning stoves, which burned your eyes. The sink that we made in the kitchen actually had a reservoir built into it that would hold about 400 gallons because their water supply was so inadequate or so spotty that they felt they needed some kind of reservoir so they could carry on when the water wouldn't be available. The sand we used was so coarse that it had to be sifted on site by, in this particular situation, I think it was Chris and John did a lot of the sifting, but that was the way they got clean enough sand to make mortar with. The truck that they brought the sand with didn't have a dump truck, so we just offloaded it by hand. These are just all examples of the way the Guatemalans have to cope every day. But, that's not really the most important part of the way they have to cope, because the way the poverty really hit me was when I heard that the children only had tortillas to eat. And frequently, all day long, the kids would just have a few tortillas. And this gets to the heart of what Mission Guatemala does. They help provide food, especially in a rice-soybean mixture, that gives those children some protein so that they can grow. As someone else said, these children are frequently small, too small for their age. But now with the rice and the protein they're getting through Mission Guatemala, they're able to grow to their full potential. And they also cannot learn in school because they were too hungry to learn. So by providing food at the schools, just as this kitchen that we're helping build will provide food for the students, they'll be able to reach their full potential. And I feel this is the one way that this cycle of poverty may be broken eventually. I'd be remiss to not comment too on how hard the ladies did work. I was extremely impressed with the whole group, but for whatever reason, the guys got the jobs with the hand saws and the hammers, etc. And the women used the shovels and the harder stuff like picking up the concrete in buckets. And I don't know if it was John or Alex, I think one of them said they were going to try to keep that going at home. But I just want to thank the church for the opportunity. I want to thank the church for the support they gave us, because I think this is very worthwhile, and I think any of you in good health should definitely consider doing this if this comes up in the future. Thank you.
Well, I can tell you one thing. There's no ready-mix concrete in Guatemala anywhere. One day we said, what are we going to do today? And he led us to a pile of gravel, sand, with a big hollow in the middle where it was filled with lime. And he said, shovel this to mix it. He said, shovel it 3 times. So we did. It was hard. We went back the next day, and he'd added more lime to it and water, and he said, shovel this. So now we're shoveling it with water, and it was hard. So I have a new appreciation for the way they have to live in Guatemala. I wanted to talk about a couple of things. First of all, everything everybody has said is absolutely true for me as well as for them. I want to talk about a young man named Diego. Diego he works for Mission Guatemala. He's 26 years old. He is a Mayan. And he serves Mission Guatemala as the liaison with the mission teams. So he was with us all of the time, and he worked with us. So he was right there with us. The thing that I want to tell you about Diego, just to emphasize what happens in Guatemala, is that I don't know the reason why, but when Diego was 7 years old, his parents had to put him out of the home. They couldn't take care of him. And so Diego was out at 7. He hung with the neighbors, sort of lived with them. They sort of fed him. But that's the way he grew up. At some point in time in Diego's life, he met up with some folks who took an interest in him and gave him a scholarship. And he was able to come to the United States for 2 years to study and to learn English. So he told me that he was 26. He said people down here, young men and women, will get married at 16. He said they have no idea where they're going to live. They have no idea what they're going to do to earn a living, but that's the way it is. So I asked him, I said, well, Diego, you're 26. What do you think you're going to do? When are you going to get married? And he said, oh, I might get married by the time I'm 30. So anyway, his goal is he speaks English, he speaks Spanish. There are various Mayan tribes, groups in Guatemala, and they all have a different dialect. There are 3 main Mayan groups. And so Diego is a member of one of those groups. So obviously he could speak that language. He's learning the other 2 Mayan dialects, the 2 main Mayan dialects, because he wants to become and remain an interpreter. So that's Diego's plan. And the thing that amazed me, this is maybe what I brought back. Here's a young man who was put out of his home at 7. On the Sunday, our first Sunday there, it wasn't a work day, so we visited a town about 2 hours away called Chichicastenango. And as it turns out, that's where Diego's mother has a stall, because she is one of those Guatemalans who makes a living by, weaving and doing things like that. And so Diego took us to her stall. And I guess I came away thinking, if I'd been turned out of my home when I was 7, I'm not sure I would have wanted anything to do with my mother, my father, but Diego wasn't that way. Diego had a good relationship with his mother. I brought this because this is what I bought from Diego's mother, and I'll have it out there so you can see it. The other thing that I want to say is about Mission Guatemala, and it is because Mission Guatemala kind of operates differently, I think, than a lot of mission groups. Bobby and Judy and I felt that we could have done a whole lot of good down there if they'd given us some paint and some paintbrushes. because we were in one of their schools, and it needed to be painted. You know, it looked dingy, and we thought, man, if we just had some paintbrushes and paint, we could really get this place shaped up. But Mission Guatemala works with the town councils, and basically it's not that Mission Guatemala does to the people there. They work with the town councils and let the town councils decide what it is that's needed. And so in this case, the decision had been made by the town council that they needed a cafeteria or a kitchen to go with their school on site. And so therefore, that's what our job was. It wasn't to paint, it was to pour concrete in the kitchen, and that's what we did. So anyway, I came away impressed by the people there, and I've seen God work in all areas of those people's lives. And I'm like Bobby. I'd never really considered going on a mission trip before, but whenever Chris started talking about this one, I thought, I have to go. I went home and told Steve, I said, you can go with me if you want to. If you don't want to, or if you feel like you can't, you don't have to, but I'm going. And so I did. And I'm glad I did. I'm like Bobby. Well, shoot, I'll just say it. You guys all know it anyway. I was the oldest darn person on the team. So, yeah, I'm 5 months older. So anyway, and it was hard work, but I loved every minute of it. I'd like to say that I would go back, but, the window may be closing for me. I don't know whether I can go back and work that hard again or not, but it was well worth it. And I would just encourage anybody with a heart at all to be the hands and feet of Jesus on this earth, to consider, if you can at all, doing something like this. And I know that Chris is thinking about putting together another mission team, and I would just encourage you all. It is a life-changing event.
And now for my sermon today. No, I'm kidding. I think that we all agree that there are things, both tangible and intangible, that we will carry with us for some time. And I want to share with you just a little bit about Mission Guatemala. Because it is near and dear to my heart. There was this, Tom Heaton, whenever he spoke here, he may have shared a little bit, but I want to briefly tell you. Tom adopted 2 boys from Guatemala as a single father. He wasn't married, but he really wanted kids, and so he adopted them as a pastor. And these kids were troubled because they had not had a good life at all. And so they came here, and he struggled to parent these 2 boys. And they had learning disabilities. They had challenges that he didn't anticipate. And while he was at Mount Vernon First United Methodist Church, he shared with his district superintendent, which is like the pastor to all of us pastors, and the bishop of the state of Indiana, that God was calling him to this ministry. And I got to see the bishop this week, and he said, in our wisdom, his bishop and his district superintendent strongly discouraged him to do this. We thought he was crazy because he didn't really have a plan. He said, I don't know, I'm just supposed to go down there. Well, this is several years later now. This organization is phenomenal. It employs, Dolly is their donations coordinator, who records all of the giving and sends out thank you letters and all of that from the United States. But everybody else is in Guatemala. And there's 2 or 3 Americans that work there, but then everybody else is Guatemalan. And everybody who is in a salaried position or a position there that's full-time, Mission Guatemala, through your donations, they pay for education. And so our construction manager is actually going to school on the weekends and at night to get his degree in civil engineering. So he will build roads. Maybe he'll stay on with Mission Guatemala, I don't know, in the future. The social worker was getting a degree in like nutrition or something else like that. And Diego was deciding what he wanted to do beyond his education that he had. And those are success stories, because these people, they don't want to get their education and leave. They want to get their education and stay, so they can be an inspiration to these kids, to these adults, to their communities, and serve and love them. I felt like we did a lot of good. But we were a small part. You know, it's kind of like faith. It's a lot like faith, in that we don't always get to see the seeds that we plant bloom. We don't always get to see them grow. We were just a part in a chain that happened to lay the floor in this kitchen. There was a group a couple of weeks before us that was from the church that I previously served, that they did the lye and the painting on the ceiling, and they said it was hard work too. This past 2 weeks ago, when the bishop and the cabinet were down there, part of what they got to enjoy was the dedication of the kitchen. The kitchen, which will serve 400 to 500 kids meals every day, has a plaque outside of it that said, donated in Spanish, I don't know how it says it, but donated by Mission Guatemala. Do all the good you can. And that's what the plaque says outside of there. And it will impact this community for years to come. The last thing I'll say is, if you look at the pictures, I don't know if you noticed, but on top of the kitchen, there's all this rebar that is coming out of the top of the building. And everywhere that you look, 99% of the buildings have rebar coming out of the top of them, right? There's two reasons for that. One, an unfinished project pays less taxes than a finished project. So it's always under completion. The other thing that I think it represents is hope. It's hope that someday maybe there will be a second floor on that kitchen. Someday, maybe on their house, God will bless them with the resources that they can build the needed second story, so that they actually have a bedroom and not just one big room in their house. That the church will have enough people that they'll need to add a second story to educate the children. It represents hope. That's what, we went out to dinner one night, and a Mayan gentleman who owns the restaurant, that's what he said that groups like us give his people, is hope that tomorrow will be better, that with hard work and help from our fellow man, that tomorrow will bring hope. So thank you on behalf of the team for sending us with your blessing, with your resources, and with your prayers. We'll all be out in the lobby after we sing our closing hymn, which everybody's going to stand up and they're going to play. I would encourage you to ask questions. If you're interested in wanting to know, how can I give to Mission Guatemala, see Dolly. She'll tell you how you can do that and support it. And then I'm going to have a sign-up sheet. If you're interested at all in taking a trip, we'll see if we have enough to maybe take a trip.